I promise I'm not nervous, but it definitely looks like it.
Appearance, just appearance.
That's right. That's not.
Yeah.
I'm not nervous. I'm nervous. Welcome to another episode of Shift Work and Jam Sessions. Our first video interview.
Okay.
It is an honor.
Yeah. Pleasure to have you with us here, Sam.
Well,
yeah.
Thanks for having me. It's really good to meet you two in person. Taylor, we've met before, but yeah, Dakota, good to meet you.
Good to meet you, buddy.
Yeah.
Excited to do this.
Yeah, this has been when we met a couple of weeks ago, I guess it is now. I was like, dude, Dakota, you're gonna be in for a treat. Sam is awesome, legit. Like, I'm trying not to ask questions. I gotta save it all for the podcast.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm really excited for this. So yeah. So maybe start off by introducing yourself, Sam. Where did you grow up? How did you end up in KW?
Yeah. So my name is Sam Nabi. I am a hip hop artist. I'm a poet. I grew up in Whitby, Ontario. I was born in Ottawa. My family moved to the GTA when I was 1. And I kind of have family all over the place. And not only like my immediate family, you know, some of my uncles and aunts are still in Ottawa and then in the States, but then I also have extended family all around the world. So I always felt like kind of a citizen of the world. And I don't know if you have any experience with this as well, but like growing up in public school in the late 90s, that was sort of how the whole sense of multiculturalism and Canadian identity was pitched to us as kids, and there was this sense of, you know, you guys can be anything you want to be, you know, you're a citizen of the world. It was thinking back, that was like definitely part of the experience growing up, where, you know, it wasn't so much the place that I was living where I got a lot of artistic inspiration. I mean, Whitby is a pretty suburban commuter town. There's not a lot of culture. When I was a teenager, we would always have to go to the next city over. We'd have to go to Oshawa or Ajax to go to the mall because Whitby didn't have one. Even the movie theater was like far away. So it was a little bit weird growing up in a place like that, where as a kid, I didn't have a whole lot of independence. I was in French immersion. I had a happy childhood. It wasn't that it was terrible, but it was just in terms of how it influenced my art and my culture. I felt like I was in French immersion, which meant I was in a school outside of my neighborhood.
Yep.
So all my school friends, I didn't hang out with after school. All the kids in my neighborhood, I didn't really get to know them that well. And so a lot of my relationship building and bonding was through school clubs, which was great. You know, we had a music club. We had a human rights club for people to get involved politically. And so, you know, I was coming of age, getting to understand about the world, getting to understand how art can be a force to interpret the world. And, you know, a lot of the pop culture that I was getting was just mainstream pop culture. So, you know, yes, you know, I'd be listening to music. Yes, we'd be listening to, we'd be rapping verses in the schoolyard of whatever the top 40 hits were. You know, 50 Cent in the Club, some Eminem, DMX, Lil Bow Wow.
Nice.
Nelly. I was a big fan of Nelly growing up.
Up.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, that's some of the music that shaped me. So I, you know, and Nelly in particular, I still hang on to a lot and listen to his back catalog, even though, you know, most of these lists that you see of like top 10 rappers or top 50 singles of the 2000s and stuff like that, you know, his name doesn't get mentioned, I think, as often as it should. Like,
yeah.
I'm not one of those hip hop artists that's like, I've been listening to Rakim since I was 8 years old, and that's it. You know, I realized that I come from a place that was just absorbing whatever mainstream radio culture was given to me, and I had to do a lot of my own work and my own curiosity to lead me to those alternative artists, those more underground artists, and especially when it comes to Canadian hip hop, you know, finding those people that really inspired me. So fast forward to when I moved here to Kitchener-Waterloo. I came to the University of Waterloo for school. And back then there was an HMV right near campus on University Avenue. And so I went in there. You know, it's this time of my life when I've left home, I'm on my own, I'm learning to be an adult. So I got connected with the radio station, campus radio station, and there was a promoter there named Carrie Humphreys, and she actually booked me in to perform at a lot of local bars. And this was a period of time when, like there are full-time music journalist promoters that are like helping to book paid talent awesome. To play bar gigs, and you'd get a percentage of the cover and this and that. And so, I was really getting to know the music scene here. But one of the albums that I picked up was Troubadour by Kanon. And he's a rapper that has really influenced me in a lot of ways. I think he you know, that album I think was 2007 or 2008, and he doesn't shy away from singing when he wants to, rapping when he wants to, having a fun track when he wants to, talking about war in his childhood trauma growing up when he wants to. Yeah. And so it's this real mix of storytelling, which I've always been drawn to, and then just a real diversity of music where he's going to use whatever tool he needs to tell the right story for that song. And then there's even one at the very end of the album called Does It Matter? Does It Really Matter? Where it's just this very intense electro, dance beat. And it's completely out of character with everything else on the record. Nice. But the lyrics are talking about both music, but also personally in his experience. It doesn't really matter who or where or when someone is from, as long as the beat is hot.
For real.
And so, that's just a bit of a sampling of some of the music that inspired me. I mean, again, growing up as a kid, we would get Columbia House CD catalogs, and I would get all the top 40 compilation records, and one of them that I kept playing again and again from the Now 4 CD
nice.
is You Got Me by The Roots. And so, as a kid, I'm just going through this mix of music from pop, country, R&B, and The Roots come on, and that's the song that I always put on repeat.
Right on.
And so I didn't even put two and two together at that point. But, another song that was really, really influential for me at that time was even Gwen Stefani, Let Me Blow Your Mind.
Okay.
Like when that line comes in at the very beginning, everyone knows what's gonna go.
Yep.
Like that's just you only need those first few notes, and then you're gonna have a good time. And Eve raps on that track by The Roots. You Got Me. So there's these little things that have entered my life, and for some reason or other I gravitated to them, and I never really understood why, or never really understood the context until I got older and I started doing my own digging and learning, who are these people that I was attracted to musically as a little kid.
That's awesome, man.
That's huge. Yeah. So much influence in there. Now, would you say that a lot of that time spent in Whitby, would that have affected kind of what you do now too? Like just that sense of, turning inward, I guess, as opposed to going out and playing with the other kids or whatever. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Your friends are at school in a different side of town and whatnot. How did that relate into your music and your style too?
Yeah, for sure. I got a piano from my aunt as a Christmas present, or maybe a birthday present one year. I don't remember. And like a lot of suburban kids, I spent a lot of time in my bedroom.
Yep.
And so I had a little Casio keyboard. I had a microphone. I had a 4-track cassette recorder. And yeah, I would spend hours and hours like doing covers of songs that I liked, making up my own melodies.
Awesome.
And yeah, sometimes I would make up a song and then realize it was a song that already existed.
That's awesome.
But yeah, no, I spent many, many hours either just sitting in front of the stereo system, reading liner notes of the lyrics that I was listening to, or, recording songs off the radio onto cassette tapes, or making my own music. So yeah, I got very familiar with that 4-track cassette recorder.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's a common theme in really deep artists too, is that time spent alone, right? Because that's where it comes out of.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome, man.
Now, when you first started making your music, would you say you were in the rap genre, or were you in more pop, or because you listened to so many different types?
Yeah.
What would you say you started off with? Or
yeah. It depends how far back you want to go. This is because this is bringing back a lot of memories for me. When I was in grade like 2 or 3, it was the era of the supergroup, and the Spice Girls, Backstreet Boys. That was the thing that all the kids knew about. But also, we were getting rap influences. We were getting R&B influences. And I just remember there was a group of 4 or 5 of us at school, and we were in like grade 3, making plans about how we were going to go tour and like go play shows worldwide, because that's what our idols did. And we said, well, if we're going to do that, then we need to make some songs. And we made, I don't know where the inspiration came from exactly, but we did make a rap about the last day of school. Yeah. And asked the teacher to perform it in front of the class. And so I guess it's just there was just a sense of creativity in the air. But yeah, when I started making my own music and performing my own music, it was in the singer-songwriter genre. Yep. It was political. It's the tradition of protest music in general, I think, is what I gravitate to. And so, yeah, I had a few songs. I entered a competition called Whippy Idol, which was a spin-off of the whole Canadian Idol, American Idol stuff. And yeah, performed for the first time on a stage in front of a crowd of people that I didn't know when I was 16. Wow. And then when I came here to Kitchener-Waterloo, yeah, I was doing folk music, I was doing pop music, but every so often I would also intersperse like a rap verse into a couple of songs where it made sense. Cool. And that part of it's interesting because there was a whole I don't know what to say it's like a cultural mood at that time, and I'm thinking like 2005 to 2015, where if you were on stage with a guitar and singing, and then you drop a rap verse in the middle of your song, it's the best thing ever. People go crazy. People are not expecting it. And it even crosses over into, I would say, like cheap laughs sometimes when people would do like a song like 50 Cent in the club, just acoustic guitar and singing the lyrics rather than rapping them, and you don't realize until half a verse in that this guy's actually singing a 50 Cent song. And in some ways that can really stray into either making fun of rap or making it more palatable for an audience that thinks that kind of music is dangerous. And yeah, if I'm going to analyze my trajectory, it's been more and more about going from that gentler side of music into a genre where I can be more upfront about what I'm saying, be more clear about my message. Because I think if you're a folk musician, it's really hard to just come out and say, fuck the police. Yeah. But as a rapper, you have more permission in the genre to come out and really say exactly what you mean in the way that you want to say it. So yeah, those are just some reflections. But yeah, I moved through folk music into pop, into rap, and it's interesting now. I just did a concert back in September where I wanted to perform with a live band. So I had my songs with the backing track. I played piano as well. And then I had a drummer, Ryan Dugal on the drums, and my friend Doug DeRosario on guitar. And we did like a live version of some of my last 3 years of hip hop music.
Right on.
Which is really, really fun. And there are artists now bringing back that live instrumentation into hip hop performance.
Yeah.
So that's something that's been on the rise in the last 5 years, where you have people bringing in live keys, live guitar on stage, live drums. Artists like Anderson .Paak are crossing over from jazz, funk, R&B, rap. And I think it's really cool to see rappers embracing live instruments, and then also on the other side of things, genres like jazz really embracing rap in an authentic way, and not in not as a joke. So yeah, thinking back to like the 2005 era, there were a lot of people just trying to throw in some rap as a joke to what they were doing. And now I feel like there's a little bit more of a genuine exchange of cultures, exchange of musical ideas happening.
Yeah, a lot less shock humor.
Yeah.
And more like, this is real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which is what it should be. Hip hop should not be fake.
Yeah.
And it is definitely not out there to make people laugh. Well, I mean, like, there are some, sure, but yeah, no, it should be taken seriously by artists, at least.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to when hip hop first got popular, and people just looked at it like, oh, you're not playing an instrument, you're not singing, you're just talking over a beat, and it's taken a long time for people to respect it as an art form that it is. Like famously, artists like Prince hated hip hop and would not allow his music to be sampled by artists because he didn't think the genre was going to last. So it's been 50 years now. Hopefully we can put that,
fingers crossed,
put that to rest.
Getting pretty serious now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Sam, you mentioned that when you got to Waterloo, you got hooked up with the radio there and started doing some venues. Did you have a favorite venue, or were there some that kind of like that you gravitate more towards, or talk to us about that?
Yeah, there were a few venues that I kicked around. So this was 2008. The venues that were active were very different than what we have today.
Okay.
There were some really divey places. I got booked to play at the Circus Room one time, and people who've been in Kitchener for a while know the Circus Room. It's it is just, think about the most like sleazy dive bar you can, and that's pretty much what it is. But somehow back then they had a budget for live music, so yeah, let's appreciate that. I also got booked to play at the Mongolian Grill a lot, which is a pretty unconventional place. So they have the main restaurant area, but then they have a bar on the side room. This was on University Plaza as well, and I played many gigs there, and it's interesting. Like, people were happy to go to a bar and pay $10 cover and hear someone play music while they watch the hockey game on silent. And I don't think we have that culture as much anymore. People, if they're going out and, it's a live music night and they weren't expecting to pay $10 cover, I think a lot of people might just go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So we have to build up that culture again of when you're going out to also, expect maybe you're going to pay some cover for live music, because unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, people don't drink as much now as they used to, and the bars are not able to make enough money to pay the artists, at least that's what I've been told. So yeah, you can't expect to pack a house and everyone's going to have 6 beers, because people are a little more cautious about their health, and people are a little more responsible now than maybe we were 10, 15 years ago. And people are not just gonna do that. So yeah, Mongolian Grill, Circus Room, those were a couple of the more unconventional places. I had my album release concert at the Boathouse, and that was a really, really special time. The Boathouse is an institution for live music, and I was really happy to have a show booked there, because everyone was there to listen. It was 2009, and it was just a really warm place. I actually brought up a couple of my friends from Whitby to come and play with me that night, and it again, like, cover at the door. Artists were paid pretty fairly, and even though probably most of the people there didn't know who I was and had never listened to my music before, they were enthusiastic about it, and it was a good crowd. It was a receptive crowd. And the last place I'll mention from that time period is Maxwell's Music House. So Maxwell's has their current location up on University Ave, but they used to have a smaller space on King Street, just near the Laurier campus.
Okay.
And it was a smaller spot. They had a lot of open mics, and it was also one of the venues that was supportive of hip-hop when a lot of other places weren't. So they had hosted DJ beat battles back in the day, and this was before I had come to KW, but from what I hear from other DJs and hip-hop artists in the region, there's a guy named Jay Young, DJ Know It, and he's from Cambridge. He would host DJ beat battles at Maxwell's Music House. And Paul Maxwell was always someone who would support hip-hop in general. He would always provide a stage for rappers and for DJs. So lots of respect to him.
No,
Absolutely.
that's amazing.
So these venues that really helped you shape who you are as an artist.
Yeah.
This has got to be the jump off point for Tri-City hip hop. No?
Kind of. I mean, I'm always interested in history and local history and what's happening in the KW scene.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of artists that feel like they need to leave this region to make a living, and that's true for a lot of them. I mean, there's only so many shows you can play here. If you're going to be a full-time musician, you need to tour. And there are some other areas like Toronto or Montreal or BC that have a more robust scene, right? But what I love about KW in particular is the house show scene. So there's always little pockets, and they kind of change every 3 to 5 years, I feel like. But there's like one house that's organizing shows, and it could be punk, or it could be folk, or it could be R&B, and there's just different communities of people playing music in each other's homes. And if you can find one person to introduce you, it feels like that unlocks a whole community. Yeah. So that was the other side of the coin of my experience with music in here, is not only performing, but like attending a lot of house shows and understanding who the artists were in the region, and just like being in a cozy living room with 30 other people, and in uptown Waterloo or downtown Kitchener, and just really enjoying music together in a community.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And your project here, Tri-City Hip Hop, is an amazing thing too.
Thanks.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So this came out of an arts grant that I got from the Waterloo Region Arts Fund in 2020. And it was basically an excuse for me to talk to a lot of people that I admired in the local hip hop scene. And there are names that I knew about. There's Pro Logic, Fraction, DJ Know It, who I talked about. These are some of the DJs who were making hip hop in this region since the 80s. And again, they played at clubs, and clubs that maybe still exist but are very different than they used to be, or that just don't exist anymore. There was a place in Waterloo, north of the university, called the Twist, which then became the Flying Fox, and I don't know what it is now, but when it was the Flying Fox, it was more of a salsa club.
Okay.
But back in the day when it was the Twist, through this project, I got to see concert posters from when Public Enemy came through there and Vanilla Ice came through there. Wow. And apparently the Vanilla Ice concert was a big controversy and he kind of got ran out of town, but that's a different story. That's maybe not my story to tell because I wasn't there, but it sounds like that was a lot of fun. But there are people that have been making hip hop in this region for 40 years. Yeah. And I think we need to really recognize that, especially as some of these venues, they change names, they change purposes, or they just get demolished and they get rebuilt. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think it's just about hip hop, but in music in general, that we can lose the history if we don't document it. Yeah. So Tri-City Hip Hop was just like my experience of interviewing people, asking them, where are the places that supported you and that sustained your art? What are the places that inspired you to create? And, we post some music videos up on there from different spots around KW. So if you go on tricityhiphop.com, you'll see a music video with people rapping in Victoria Park. Nice. Or in different areas of Kitchener or Waterloo. There's some songs in there where artists are name dropping specific intersections and neighborhoods. And so it's just good to see it all on the map, because some of these places, even though we know where they happened, you go there today and it's just completely different.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's very important to document that stuff. Very important to keep history, mm-hmm. let people know where this has come from, what's been here, right? Because like you're saying, like a lot of these artists have been doing this since the 80s, mm-hmm. and we're just not known for it in this region enough, right?
Yeah, and we've had really big acts come through, like, but Mobb Deep has performed here at Lulu's. I believe it was at Lulu's. The Rascals, Canadian rap royalty, have come through here. Shad got his start, through... I feel like our region likes to claim Shad really hard, and he's like more lukewarm about claiming us back. But Shad went to school at Laurier and won the competition from 91.5 The Beat radio station to help launch his album, and that's sort of that's one of the chapters of hip hop history in this region. Yeah. So Shad's an artist that I really love, and I feel like he's someone that I look to as a real inspiration for how to structure songs and how to be like lighthearted but also serious in your music. So yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned Maxwell's and you mentioned Shad. That's where we got to see him play, and that was one amazing performance.
That was big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shad always shows love to Waterloo. He'll always come through here because he knows he's got a lot of fans here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think if I remember right, Sam, because we talked a little bit before the podcast, was there another concert at the same time when Shad performed last year?
Yeah, so last year, that was May 2022. It just so happened on the same night there was the Shad concert. I was part of a show that had booked Hawaii Mighty here at the library. Yeah. And that was part of the Mel Brown Festival. So Mel Brown was a fantastic blues artist who influenced groups like the Rolling Stones, and he happened to make his career here in Kitchener in the latter part of his career, being the house blues band at a club called Pop the Gator. So the Mel Brown Festival has been created to honor his legacy, and the purpose is to uplift Black artists and to showcase emerging Black artists in all genres, not just blues. Yeah. Because we already have the Blues Fest. Yeah. So this is something a little bit different. But anyway, I was involved in curating the Emerging Artist Showcase. But then our headliner for that night was Hawaii Mighty, who had just won a Juno Award for Best Artist, I believe. Yeah, I don't know if I'm getting it mixed up, because I know that she was one of the first women to win the Best Rap Artist, and then that might have been the Polaris Prize. And then now with the Juno, she just won Best Artist period, and it was the first time that a rapper had done that, I believe. So it was a really big deal. We had Havaya Mighty here. She really, really gave a fantastic show. But it was a little bit bittersweet that it had to happen on the same night as Shad, because I know a lot of people wanted to go to both.
Yeah. And now, are you a part of that curating this year as well?
Yep, we're doing it again this year. So the Kitchener Public Library is really taking on more of a leadership role for 2023. There will be shows hosted here at the library, and we haven't gotten all the details yet, but we're working on them. It's going to be the last weekend in May.
Nice.
And again, it's just showcasing Black artists, prioritizing local artists, of course. But it's curated by myself, as well as Carlos Morgan, who is a Juno-nominated R&B singer in his own right. And Carlos will actually be performing at the fundraising gala that we're going to have April 1st.
Okay.
Downstairs in the theater here at the KPL. And then also Nathan Stretch, who is part of the Kitchener Public Library. And he's an artist in his own right as well. So all of us are wearing multiple hats. We also have Sandra, what's her last name? We also have Sandra Tyler, who is a media executive and hosts a radio show on CKWR. And she is part of our organizing team.
Awesome.
This year. Yeah.
That's exciting. We'll have to make sure we're available.
Yeah.
End of May, it sounds like last weekend in May.
Yep. So 26th, 27th, 28th, I think.
And then the fundraiser on April 1st.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. So we're doing a fundraiser April 1st in order to make the full festival in May as affordable as possible for people.
I see.
So we're hoping that we can charge as little as possible for those tickets in May. Part of that effort is going to be doing a bit of a fundraiser in April.
Yeah, definitely.
Where can people get those tickets?
So if you look up Mel Brown Festival on Instagram or melbrownfestival.ca, I want to say .ca.
Okay.
Just search Mel Brown Festival. You'll see the website there. We don't have tickets available just yet, although you can get tickets for the April 1st fundraiser.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
So it sounds like you've collaborated with a fair amount of people. Who's been your favorite to work with, and on what project? Because it doesn't sound like it is apparent that you are a busy man and have your hands in a lot of different things. So who's been your favorite to collaborate with, and on what project, whether it be in music or in the festival scene or whatever?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. There's so many great relationships that I've built here in the music community. I want to talk about a friend of mine, Richard Garvey, who's a folk artist. He's moved to BC now, and him and I were part of a group that organized a festival called Hold the Line Festival. It was held out on a farm in the countryside.
Oh, cool.
And so the Hold the Line is talking about the countryside line, which prevents the city from sprawling out into farmland. And so it was an environmentalist festival that had a cycling component in it with a bike ride around the city, and then also a music festival.
Very cool.
And Richard really spearheaded the music part of that and made it clear that we want to be able to pay artists fairly. There's way too many festivals. Like even South by Southwest doesn't pay their artists. Did you know that?
No.
Like anything?
No, like if you play at South by Southwest, they give you a free ticket to the festival.
Huh.
And that's it.
Well, I mean, those tickets are expensive, though.
But I mean, it's just like the music industry is such an exploitative thing that we wanted to make sure we were treating people well, and we were able to. We were able to give people, a $500 set for a solo artist, more for bands, and just setting that tone of we want to make sure that people can actually make a living if they're playing festivals like ours. And so we brought some of that same energy to the Mel Brown Festival, and just realizing that, this is something that's really important to compensate artists fairly.
Yeah.
because we don't really have standard rates in terms of, you know, actors have their you know, there are different standards for paying actors depending on if they have a speaking role or if they have a background role and this and that. And for musicians and for performing artists, like, the culture of the industry is just so different. So it leaves the door open for a lot of venues in particular to take advantage of emerging artists. And in hip hop in particular, like, there were a lot of beat battles and things that happen not just here in KW, but all over the world, where it's pay to play. And, you know, if you want to be part of this cypher or you want to be part of this beat battle, then you actually pay to perform. And so, you know, that kind of behavior, I know Jay Young, who I mentioned before, DJ Know It, he talks a lot about this too. And it's not fair to the artists, and it's not something that promoters or venue owners should be expecting, that people will perform for free. So yeah, that's a long roundabout way of saying, like, there have been certain people that entered my life that really taught me how to organize a show well, so that you're treating the artist well, so that the venue, you know, can be sustainable and that the audience has a good time. But you can't do that on the back of the artists, because otherwise you'll burn some bridges, and you might not have any people to play at your festival next year, right?
Yeah, longevity in this thing requires that everybody be treated fairly. Yeah.
And now, being in the music industry, you mentioned that it's fairly exploitative. Is there ways around that with modern technology, meaning like live streams, blogs, websites? Are there ways for people to kind of circumvent that, or what have you found, Sam?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in this this new era of whatever label contracts people are signing these days, but I do know that if someone makes a hit off of TikTok and then a label approaches them, we're in an era now where artists are doing all their own fan development, for lack of a better word. Like, if you get famous on the internet these days, you've already made a song that is popular. You've already gained a fan base. You've already gained some followers. So what is a label actually going to offer you? Like, the labels used to approach people at the early stages of their career and say, look, we're going to get you fans, we're going to get you followers, we're going to get you we're going to get your song to number one. In today's world, the especially like the TikTok stars, their songs are getting to number one on the charts, and then the label comes to them. And so I think they have to come with a better deal than they have in the past. And artists who recognize that they actually hold more power than they think are going to be the ones that come out ahead, because they could say, well, you know, I'm not going to take the first offer I get. I'm going to make sure that whatever you're giving me, if it's Universal approaching you or Sony or whatever, that there's actually something tangible there, and that they're not just taking, you know, half your royalties for something that you could have already done on your own. It makes me think of the experience of one of our own hometown rappers, Dom Valley. He's been really killing it on TikTok, and that's just been in the last couple of years, but he's been putting in the work for many, many years, making his own music videos, directing his own music videos, really putting out high quality content. He's an excellent performer. He's an excellent songwriter, and he's just recently been nominated for a Juno for Rap Recording of the Year.
Right on.
So this might be the year that he really gets that that recognition from the industry. And yeah, he was approached by a label last year, and for one reason or another, the deal didn't go through. And what did he do after that? He's still an independent artist. He made a song called "Didn't Go Through" about that experience. And so, you know, he's someone that I look up to as someone who's really got his finger on the pulse of new media and is able to bring his fans along for the ride, whatever's happening to him. He's got that fan base, and he knows how to connect with them. Mm-hmm. And he thought he was going to get a record deal. It didn't happen, but he was able to turn that lemons into lemonade somehow
Yeah.
to just keep going, and now he's been nominated for a Juno, so kudos to him.
Yeah, that's amazing.
No, that is cool. That's
It's good to hear stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the new age of hip hop, you know, with the internet, with all of this that we have at our fingertips. You can go from the green screen to on stage, but the on stage part is still really important, right?
Definitely. I'm really grateful that I got a lot of experience on stages as a kid. I I learned to really be a performer through my church. I was at a church youth group in a community that just happened to like have really good music. And it was pretty intense. For what it's worth, I'm no longer part of that community. I don't consider myself Christian anymore. It wasn't something that I was raised with. It was something that happened between the ages of like 12 and 20.
Okay.
And, there's that whole high school was like practicing music for the church youth group. And they were pretty intense about it. They made us come in like 2 hours before everyone else and practice, and like we were on the big stage, and there's something more to unravel there, which I haven't really grappled with too much yet, of like how churches really give people a lot of musical experience, and then what do they do with that later on in their lives, especially for hip hop and R&B singers that are influenced by gospel. Like there's a lot of rappers here in this region in particular that I'm thinking of who are still making like faith-based music and got their start, singing in church.
Yeah.
But that's a bit of an aside. So the one thing I'm really, really grateful for, even though I have a complicated history with that experience, is I learned how to use a microphone on stage. I learned how to jam with a band. I learned how to like improvise and look over at what the drummer was doing and look over at what the lead singer is doing, and make it work in a live setting. There's a lot of artists these days, especially in the last couple of years through the pandemic, where people have been making music in their bedrooms, for example, and because there were no shows, maybe you record something on your own and you get famous and you get a lot of followers, and now it's 2 years later and you have to play your very first show. There's a big step there. Like there's a big gap there. And so any opportunities for people to get on a stage, I think, is a good one. And one of the things we don't have a whole lot of in KW right now is open mics. So that's definitely a gap. I'm hoping it gets filled by the new Boathouse. I know they're reopening and rebranding and trying to be a home for music again. So hopefully that can be a spot where people can transition from the bedroom to a small stage and then get them set up for playing a bigger stage, hopefully.
Amazing.
Yeah. I love it. So with that, you mentioned COVID in there and the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Would you say that affected you specifically as well, like with your music, or did you have to adapt, or what did you do during the pandemic?
Well, I had an album all ready to go. This was part of the same arts grant that I mentioned that launched Tri-City Hip Hop. I have an album that came out 2020 called Attract Hazard, and it was all set. We had the release date for March 21st, 2020. And so the week before, it was really coming down, and they're like, oh shit, they canceled St. Patrick's Day. I'm like, well, the government still says that we can gather in groups of like 20 or less. So I was trying to hustle to like arrange a tiny concert at a very small venue because we wanted to still make this happen. And then like the next day, it was like, oh, things are moving way too fast. This is not going to happen. We are shutting down. And so I did have like a live stream release for it, but that album never really got the send off it deserved that year. So during 2021, I kept writing music. My next project, Out of Body, came out, and it was very influenced by the pandemic. I have a song in there called Weary that is all about the weird moments of like, you have nothing to do other than drink at home and like go for a walk in your neighborhood outside. And what that experience was like for me sometimes, not healthy behaviors. And, you try and do whatever mental health, self-care that you can, but like you can only walk around your block so many times before you start to feel a little bit disoriented in your own neighborhood. So yeah, that was a reflection on some of the first couple of years of the pandemic. And I'm glad I put that out as well. But we were going to have the release concert for that one. And the first Omicron peak happened. Like it was January, I forget which year. And again, it was like, it seemed like things were going to be safe-ish to open up, but then we had to shut it down again. So that brings me to last summer. So summer 2022 was really the first time that I got to put these 2 albums worth of material out on stage and out in front of people. And I played a whole lot of shows throughout the summer, mostly outdoors. We had the July 1st community picnic in Waterloo Park. I played at Together We're Bitter Brewery's patio. We played on Goggle Street in downtown Kitchener. And so it was really cathartic to like take all of that 2 years of material and finally have an outlet for it.
For sure.
Yeah, it felt weird because even though these projects were released online, they were technically published, I still felt like nobody had heard them because I hadn't performed them in front of a live audience.
And how was the reaction? How was the reaction, and how was the feeling of being able to do that in front of a live audience?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I get a lot out of performing live because what I think is my top track is usually not what the crowd thinks is my top track.
Right.
And what resonates with people, like a line or a punchline or just a general feeling, it's never exactly what you think it's going to be. So I would always encourage people, like, get your music out in front of people live as soon as you can, and then, change things if you want to, emphasize different things if you want to. I'm the type of person that I go back and I revise my tracks again and again and again, and I definitely want to have the experience of feeding it to a crowd in a room and seeing what the response is in the moment before I go ahead and record that song.
I like that. Kind of like a test trial, test drive. Yeah.
Yeah, because,
cool.
You get too caught up in your own head as an artist, I think. And the other thing is people always hate their old material. I look back at some of my back catalog and I'm like, oh, I could have done that differently. I could have recorded that differently. But then you come back around to it. I play one of my old songs in a show, and people really respond well to it, and that makes me remember, like, oh yeah, this is actually a pretty good song.
Yeah, and people have feelings that are attached to that. Yeah, absolutely. Whether your feelings are different or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so your music seems very transparent, and what I mean by that is I see all these different projects that you're working on. I've gone on and I've looked at your blog and checked a few things out, and I see a lot of your influences coming through from those projects into your music. So I guess what I'm wondering is what created the love for the projects that created the love for the music.
What projects are you talking about?
So the Tri-City hip hop one was a big one.
Yeah.
Just cruising through your blog there, I was checking out a few different things that you had your hand in. Oh shoot, I don't want to butcher them on you, but there was one on a project that you had done in school showing about digital disconnect, basically. Stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm the type of person that I'm not going to create like a different online identity or a brand for every part of myself. I'm an artist. I went to school for urban planning, and I care about city government and civic inclusion and great public spaces, and that's part of my identity as well. You know, I'm an environmentalist. That's part of my identity as well. So I don't try and split these things off into separate parts of myself. And when you look me up online, or when you look at my website, like, yeah, they're all just there. Here's my music. Here's a blog post about politics. Here's something else that I'm working on that's like, you know, research about affordable housing. And yeah, it all connects because, I mean, we all live in the same world. I have a song called Classy from many years ago that talks about gentrification, and there are just different ways to tackle a problem and different ways to connect with people. And yeah, like, that's something that is on my mind. I was thinking, I was living in Hamilton at the time and seeing some of the waves of gentrification that were happening there. And one of my favorite local rappers from Hamilton, named Lee Reed, he's like a crusty old punk who's just angry at everything. And he has a song called The Price of Tacos. And he makes this observation where, you know, when the price of tacos goes from a cheap fast food to something that's gourmet, that's when you know it's happening. And so, you know, I don't remember the exact line, but it's like, first it's the tacos, and then, you know, here's the gentrification coming. And yeah, like, you'll just reach different people, and I feel like that's an authentic representation of who I am as a person and how I live in the world. I go to shows, I attend city council meetings. Those are two things that I do, and my experiences come out in the world in different ways.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I would second that with your transparency with your albums as well. Like, I can feel what you're going through in the sense of all your albums feel different. Like, it's almost like a different genre.
Yeah.
Like, I was listening to one of your albums yesterday, and it was like kind of a vaporwave, kind of laid back, chill. And then I think your most recent one was, I think you called it neo boom bap, which the boom bap king over here loves that. So the fact that it's making a comeback is awesome. And it's just cool that you're able to kind of go, like, the listener can feel what you're feeling is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I definitely pick up on whatever influences I'm feeling, and that changes over time. And with the neo boom bap, that's a phrase that I heard coined by a DJ at the University of Quebec named DJ White Sox. He does a campus radio show, and it's excellent. I highly suggest that anyone check it out if they're into boom bap in particular. It's called Pole Hip Hop. It's in French, but they play a lot of music that's English language from the US and Canada and the UK. They also play a lot of French, like from France, hip hop, as well as Quebecois hip hop. And so, as someone who's trying to keep my French alive, that's a show that I really like to listen to. And the guy there, DJ White Sox, he calls this new genre like neo boom bap. He's talking about Griselda. He's talking about people like Fred the Godson, that kind of Buffalo sound, that upstate New York sound. Because New York these days is not doing boom bap. They're doing drill, and that's the sound that's coming out of New York City right now. But there are all these other artists who are. You don't want to just call it boom bap because it is very different from what they were doing in the 90s. So yeah, some people call it neo boom bap. And I got to connect with one of the producers who's worked on West Side Gun's mixtapes. Her name's Sovereign. She's from St. Louis. And we just connected online over the pandemic, and I decided to use a few of her beats for that project. So that was what became Out of Body. And I was listening to a lot of that, Griselda, Fred the Godson, like I said. And that's what was influencing me in that time.
Very cool.
Sounds good. I also wanted to ask you about, before we got on the mics here, you mentioned about secret shows, and it came about in the sense of, I said, we need to chat about this. Champa did a performance, and Sam was telling me that he performed. And I asked him, I said, Sam, how do you get your information and how do you get stuff? But I'll let you tell us what's the secret show and how do we get information about different hip hop shows?
Yeah. So, I mean, so there's a lot of great organizers locally, and I don't know how to easily explain how to keep up with everything, because I feel like I'm not keeping up with everything. A lot of stuff in the music community is just shared, through personal networks, and so the only thing I can say is like I felt when I first moved here. Once you meet one person, it feels like that opens the door to meeting a whole community.
There it is.
And hopefully people who are new to town and are trying to find that can find it. I think the library is a great connecting point. People like Champa, he's a hip hop artist and spoken word artist, and he also works here at the library at the music studios.
Yeah.
Same with Jesse Morange, who's here, and he's a musician, and he plays in a wonderful band called Jaguar Sun. And so just through those personal relationships, hopefully there's enough connection and community there that we can make people aware of what's going on. Specifically with these secret shows, so that's a company called Good Company Productions. They are a fantastic group of people, started by a guy named Amit Mehta. He went to school at the University of Waterloo. He's a musician, and he started this company that organizes shows. They will shoot music videos for artists. They'll help artists professionalize and get ready to go on tour. But also they organize these secret shows. So you sign up, you know what day of the week it's happening and when, but you don't know where and you don't know who's playing. Okay. And so this was how they sort of built up their following, and people would go because you don't know who's playing, but you know that they're going to do a good job curating it. So the show that I was talking about with you, Champa had performed opening for Julie Black at the museum.
Oh, nice.
And so Good Co-Productions is curating a whole series of free concerts paid for by the BIA, the Downtown Business Improvement Association, and basically through a partnership with the downtown businesses, which I also own a downtown business. I'm one of the owners of Full Circle Foods, a grocery store. So it's really good to see some of our fees going to support live music in this way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a partnership between us and the museum and Good Co-Productions to really bring world-class talent to downtown Kitchener and encourage people to come in here and socialize and kick up the nightlife scene a little bit.
So needed.
Yeah. And there's all kinds of unconventional venues. Like I said, last year we had the headliner show for the Mel Brown Festival here at the library, and people were really unsure what to think of it. You're gonna have a headline show at the library? And we had it in the big lobby area. We put up a professional stage, huge sound system, lights, and then if you look over to your left, there's just rows and rows of books. So it's a really fun experience for people. So I think folks are craving novelty. They're craving something different. They don't want to just go to the same club and see the same shows. Yeah. There's also other venues like the Yeti Cafe, which is a great brunch spot. They can hold about 30 people, but they have shows in the evening. So that's a really small venue. If you're someone who, 100-seat venue is not going to be your cup of tea, either because you're still growing your fan base, or this is just the type of show you want to play. I've seen all kinds of music at the Yeti, and it's always a good time. Everything from ambient electronica to punk. I did a show there. We did some hip hop there, and it's a very DIY scene.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I like it, man. That's awesome. So you mentioned earlier that when you were in university, you were with the radio station. Mm-hmm. I believe now you're still with a radio station. What do you do there, and do you play sets on there? Do you interview people, or what's your connection there?
Yeah, I would say I'm a very casual participant in both cases in the radio station. It's not like I have a show of my own or anything. But at the University of Waterloo, I was just invited on to be interviewed one time because my residence Don knew the DJ, and then I got connected with him, and his name was Steve Krysak, and Steve introduced me to Carrie, who ended up booking me all these shows around town. So it wasn't that I was at the radio station every day, but that, you know, I listened to it a lot, and that campus radio station was a real jumping off point for me to just meet the right people who could help me in my music career.
Right.
And then, yeah, these days I've been asked to do a few episodes for a show called Local Music Live on Midtown Radio. And Midtown Radio is something that started 2019, and they're an online-only radio station really focused on local music. So it's a hyper-local music station. They also do podcasts, and they're basically a hub for musicians, for creative people, anyone who wants to do something related to audio or radio. They're really there to just amplify people's platforms. So even if you have your own podcast, you can have it syndicated on Midtown Radio, and it'll reach a bit of a wider audience as well.
That's very cool. Yeah. It's good to see little projects like that popping up.
Yeah.
People thinking just slightly outside the box. Like here you've got this, this genre or whatever you're in, and if you just look outside of the walls of it, there's all kinds of different ways to get it out there.
For sure. And it's a great opportunity for me to just reach out to artists who I've been following and say, hey, look, I'm doing this show called Local Music Live. Let me talk to you for an hour about your music and your influences. And without that platform, why would I reach out to someone, right?
Yeah.
So, people who are creating these platforms really, I think, give a boost to other creative people to say, oh, if you're doing Midtown Radio, well, maybe I can do something on there.
Yeah.
I like it, man. So we've talked to Sam, the musician, the MC. What are your hobbies outside of music? I know you touched on a few things, but let's say I'm not seeing you in the booth or the studio or on stage. What would I see you be doing? What do you like to do?
If you're not seeing me on stage, you're probably seeing me at my store, Full Circle, getting big bags of oats into the bulk food bins, or in a community advocacy. So I have my ear to the ground in a few municipal issues. I've been advocating, like I mentioned, about things related to the countryside line. I've done advocacy around cycling, safe winter sidewalks, different city budget related things, defunding the police. So I try and be a supporter and try and be an advocate for community organizing, and really at the city government level, it seems like it's easier to get people to respond to your questions, even if they're not going to do what you want them to do. At least they're going to hear you and say something back. Whereas I feel like when I was younger, I was more focused on big international issues. Like I learned about famine in some part of the world, or I learned about the refugee camps in Darfur when I was in high school. And that was a big motivating factor to say, let's raise money for World Vision. Let's write letters to the U.S. Embassy. And international solidarity is still really important, but it can be very demoralizing to think that you're going to go up against a global system. I think working on the local level can be a lot more, it's not that it's easier, but it's more connected to your day-to-day life. And then you can use all the local communities and hopefully align yourselves with other local communities that are experiencing similar things, so that you don't feel like, you know, here I am, I learned about some terrible issue, now I have to go and advocate at the national level or the international level about it, because a lot of people can just sort of lose perspective at that point and think, well, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So this has been great, man. I'd love to ask you, you know, what are you currently working on, and what's next for you?
Yeah, so I'm currently working on a new EP. Don't know how many songs exactly it's going to be yet, but it's going to be a very jazz-influenced hip-hop album. So I've got a few new tracks that I'm working on. I've been learning the piano a little bit, so I want to see if I can put that into the mix a little bit. But yeah, very, very jazz-influenced. I went on a trip to New York City back in December and went to a spot that's very special to me called the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. And that's one of the homes of slam poetry. It's just a really special place. And they have an open mic every Monday night. And so I happened to be there on a Monday night and performed in front of the crowd. And it was a really, really welcoming space. Like, there were artists there from Chicago, from New York City, from Philly. And then I was there from Canada, and they were really, really supportive. So it's a space where there are actors doing monologues, there are poets, there are R&B singers, there are rappers, and again, it's like New York is the Mecca. So it was just really, really amazing to be on that stage. So I mean, I'm a poet. That's a scene that I've been in and out of in different ways. There used to be a more active slam poetry scene here in KW that influenced me a lot as well. But then also in my trip to New York, I went to a jazz club, Smalls Jazz Club in the West Village. And it's just, I feel like there were a lot of parallels. Like, improv, jazz, you can draw parallels to freestyle rap, right? You're feeling the moment, you're understanding the beat, you're trying to come up with something evocative in that present moment, and then really connect with the crowd. So I witnessed a Japanese piano player named Miki Yamanaka, and she had just flown in from Tokyo and like played a set at midnight in New York City.
Awesome.
Just because, you know, she's that kind of artist, and it was so incredible. So yeah, I'm really into some of that more acoustic sound. I want my new record to feel like there's live instruments in the room, even if I can't afford to, you know, hire a whole orchestra to play with me. Yeah. We'll see what we can do. So that's sort of the vibe that I'm working on. If people want to follow me on Bandcamp, I recently posted an update to my followers on Bandcamp with a playlist that is like all the songs that are inspiring my sound right now.
That's really cool.
It's that very much jazz, hip hop to jazz. It's coming from both directions. There's a jazz band called El Michel's Affair that is well regarded, well known in their own right as jazz musicians. They recently released an album featuring vocals from Black Thought. And so, you know, the Roots, again, one of my favorite bands, and so this is something that I gravitated to. And it's hip hop, but it's rapping over jazz. It's not necessarily hip hop. And so we see these two genres kind of collaborating with each other in a much more genuine way than I've ever seen before. It's not just hip hop artists stealing jazz samples, and it's not just other genres like adding in a bit of hip hop for fun. It's a real collaboration happening. So that's something that I want to explore.
Very cool.
I love it. And maybe the last one, because you've been too generous, man. Yeah. You are amazing. You are amazing, Sam. What is your goal, or what do you think Kitchener-Waterloo, the Tri-Cities, can achieve? You mentioned that story there about New York being the Mecca and people flying in from Tokyo to, you know, and when you hear New York, you know you're going to have a good time. Yeah. What are your expectations of Kitchener-Waterloo? Like, where do you think we can get to?
I feel like we don't give ourselves enough credit. Like, there's a rich history of being influenced by all the places around us. So, you know, of course, this region is influenced by New York when it comes to hip hop.
For sure.
You know, pretty much everywhere is. A lot of the stories that I tell in Tri-City hip hop are involve people bringing music back from New York to this area in the 90s. And, you know, those records were what influenced people here. But also, there's people here that, you know, grew up in other parts of southwestern Ontario, which are more culturally tied to Detroit. And then we're also pretty close to Buffalo. And I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for being in this sort of Midwest, this Midwest culture, while also being really close to Toronto. And so we're a region that can be influenced by Toronto, Buffalo, New York, Detroit, and we're sort of finding our way in that mix. But I think it's good to acknowledge that, in that we can, like, it's not that we have to create our own unique sound, but we can build relationships with other artists from these areas. And I think it's easy to forget, like, it used to be quite common, actually, for hip-hop artists to build little tours all around southwestern Ontario and then Detroit area, or southwestern Ontario and Buffalo area, and even, you know, get together some American artists and Canadian artists on the same bill, so that, you know, we could make some fans over in the States and they could make some fans over here. You know, maybe things are a little different now because it's so easy to get a cheap flight anywhere in the world, but I still think there's something worth digging into there, where we look at our geography and we look at the places and the cultures that are surrounding us.
Absolutely.
I like it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
I the only other thing that I had was this documentary that you're working on too. Did you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about this. So I'm one of the projects I'm working on right now is helping out with the documentary. The working title is called Hope in Hip Hop. I don't know whether that's going to be the title at the end of it, but I'm working on it with Sarah Geidlinger and Marshall Ward from Bond Park Media, as well as John Corbin, who's really the driving creative force behind this. So John also used to go by the name of The Runaway. He was a rapper active here in the region while he was a student at Laurier in about 2005. And so he's spearheading this documentary to sort of look back at some of his experiences and also interview current artists that are in the region today. Cool. And just understand, again, sort of the similar themes of the Tri-City Hip Hop Project, like how is hip hop giving people life? How is hip hop building community? You know, it's still a genre that is sort of set aside in the margins, even though it's wildly popular on commercial radio. It doesn't get the grant funding that it deserves in terms of ratios of support when compared to other genres. But people are still carving out a little niche for themselves, and people are still making great music that speaks to them and speaks to their communities. So yeah, we're going to have some retrospectives from like older artists and younger artists, and we'll see what stories we can tell.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Is that going to be a series or a movie or?
It's going to be a documentary movie.
Okay.
Yeah. And Sarah and Marshall from Bond Park have all the gear for the cameras and stuff set up, and they're the professionals to like get the lighting, and we're doing these interviews really professionally. So I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Awesome. That's exciting.
Yeah, so that'll be end of 2023.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So nice little Christmas time, New Year's time gift.
Yeah,
for
hopefully.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Sam. This has been wonderful.
You.
Thanks for having me on. It was really great to chat with you two.
Yeah, it's been amazing chatting with you, and I hope for our viewers that you check out some of Sam's projects. He's got some good stuff out there.
Yeah.
Love it. Until next time, thanks again, and hopefully you'll want to come back. and
Absolutely.
Yeah,
anytime,
we'll do this again.
Anytime.
For sure.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.